This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Scott Howell.
Hello, good neighbors. Welcome to the Good Neighbor Podcast, brought to you by the Friends and Neighbors Group of the Greater Chattanooga area. And of course, the announcer told you, my name is Scott Howell, and I'm your host for today. You know, the Good Neighbor Podcast, the reason we designed this program is to bring an awareness to the residents living in our communities regarding locally owned and operated businesses that are operating in our neighborhoods, or in the same town, across the Chattanooga region, whatever it might be. You know, in this day of a corporate age, a lot of times we forget that there are locally owned companies right among us who provide us the same type of services, but many times with a bigger smile or warmer welcome or better customer service. And so what we want to do is highlight all those companies. Some companies, the name is nationally known, but the business is actually locally owned and operated. And that's what we want to talk about. You know, every local business has a story to tell. And at the Good Neighbor Podcast, we just want to enable them to be able to tell their story loud and proud to every neighbor all across the Chattanooga region. And today we've got one of our neighbors with us. His name is Richard Self. He is at Don Self State Farm. And Richard, we are so glad to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for being with us.
Well, man, Scott, it's great to be here with you. I really appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. You know, and now, Richard, before we jump into talking about your business, I'd like to give you the opportunity, if you'd like to tell a little bit about you and your family.
Okay, that's great. East Tennessee, born and raised, all of us. My dad grew up in Little Athens, Tennessee, about an hour north of here. That's where I was born, actually a suburb of Athens. Grew up in that area, and then as soon as I got an opportunity, right after high school, I left here. I left this part of the country, and I spent about almost 30 years away from here, and have just moved back a few years ago to this area. And it's been about 12 years. It'll be 13 years in October that I've been back. It's starting to feel like home again, finally. You know, Tennessee's always been home, but I was away from home for a long time, and I'm super glad to be back.
Yeah, East Tennessee is just one of the most beautiful places in the country. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful places, but East Tennessee is gorgeous. I love it.
We have so much to be thankful for living here where we live. It's really a blessing to live right here in East Tennessee.
Yes, absolutely. Now, Richard, you know, we call you Richard Self. Obviously, that's your name, and then we say the agency is called Don Self State Farm. So, can you kind of tell me the story there?
There's no real surprise there. We are related. Don is my dad. He's been a State Farm agent. This is 45th year.
Oh, wow.
He's been an agent for as long as anybody with State Farm that I'm aware of in this part of the country. Been here, was an agent when I was growing up in Athens, Tennessee, then had an opportunity to move to a different position with State Farm, and then is back in agency now here in Ooltewah, Collegedale area for, 28 years. That sounds crazy, but 1996 is 28 years ago. So I've been here in the Collegedale, Ooltewah area for 28 years.
Yeah, I would have never thought I would see the day that 1996 sounded like it was a long time ago.
Oh, no kidding.
Here we are.
1992 was 30 years ago, really?
Oh, you know, Richard, everybody knows who State Farm is, right? I mean, you know, just if you have to be new to the United States, not know who State Farm is. So, and we know that you sell insurance products and all like that. But I'd like for you to talk about the heart of Don Self State Farm.
Okay.
You know,
that's a great question. We have lots of opportunities these days to tell our story. We have a lot of people moving to this area from other parts of the country, and there's about a 1 in 4 chance that they're going to have been insured with State Farm where they lived before moving here. So a lot of times families will transfer their business from one State Farm agency to another. So we have an opportunity to get to interview with customers, essentially to let them know why we're different than another agent that they might pick. Even here in Ooltewah, we've been doing it for a long time. We've got well over 100 years experience. Our combined team has been in the industry for a long time. We still do business the old-fashioned way. We tried to do the online thing and try to adapt to the doing business electronically and all that. But the truth of the matter is, we weren't great at it. We were not as good at it as a lot of younger folks who are in the industry. So we sort of reverted back to doing business the old-fashioned way, making customer service the top priority. Customer service still matters, and
Yes.
even though a lot of some of the more recent generations think that how much money can I save is the most important thing. Well, when you need your insurance company, when you've had a loss of some sort, you don't remember how much premium you paid last year. You remember how well you were taken care of and getting your stuff put back together. And that we want to make that an important part of what we do. That day-to-day interaction, sitting in front of somebody, talking about coverages. We want to make sure there's no surprises when you need us.
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing worse than having a claim and finding out you didn't have the coverage you thought you had.
Absolutely. And we do everything we can to avoid that kind of surprise. Insurance can't possibly cover everything. None of us could afford it if we covered everything that happened. But we want to make sure that there's an understanding of what's covered, what might not be covered. Let's do whatever we can together between our office and our customer. We want to do what we can to minimize or eliminate as many surprises as we can.
And a lot of people don't realize that we, tend to grow up and hear people murmur about insurance. Like, oh, it's a necessary evil, and all these little things are said. But a lot of us don't realize how important it is to make sure we have the proper coverage. Talk to us about that, Richard. You don't have a claim and you find out you didn't have the proper amount of coverage.
Proper is a really important factor. It's a really important word. We could all be very easily overinsured. I mean, we could go crazy about it and spend a fortune with insurance, but an occasional sort of a routine annual or every other year review of coverages can make sure that we've got you properly covered.
Yes.
We ask questions like, have you added any new members to the family? A young couple might have had a baby. That changes some things.
Yes.
Someone may have added a sunroom to their house and added some square footage, added value to their home. We want to make sure that we have those conversations so that we don't miss some of those little details that might fall through the cracks without those conversations. Young drivers, we remember when the kids were born, but now they're 16 and they're about ready to drive.
Yes.
We want to talk to the parents to help them navigate. Well, what's it like having a new driver in the household? What kind of things do the parents need to be aware of? But more importantly, what kind of things do this young driver need to be aware of?
Yes.
How can we help reinforce some of the lessons that the parents are teaching? Those are some of the things that having a regular conversation with our customers, we get to have those but again, limiting surprises.
Yeah. And that you're talking about a lot of that, you're talking about car insurance, and oh wow, I mean that's a big dynamic because as I said before, a lot of people, maybe a lot of us don't really just think about how many automobiles that are on the highways now that are $100,000 automobiles,
right.
and up. I mean, I was driving behind a Lotus the other day.
Oh my.
And I'm not even sure, I've never checked on what those cost, but I would say it's upward to $200,000.
Neither have I. Yeah.
And I'm driving behind one today thinking, I don't want to get too close behind this guy in case he slams on his brakes, right? Because, so we think, I just want that insurance minimum. just what I have to
Oh
have.
boy.
And then I'm in an accident with a pickup truck that cost $100,000, and I find out I don't have enough coverage
That's
to
right.
cover it. What happens then, Richard?
The state minimum coverage is just that. And we have people ask us constantly, I want the least expensive thing I can get just to be legal. We understand that. However, let us show you what all these numbers represent. Let us show you what we would normally recommend, so you at least understand what all that stuff means and what the potential impact could be if we don't worry so much about fixing the stuff. The stuff's fixable. But what if you're involved in a wreck and the people in the other car have serious injuries?
Oh yeah.
That's a real problem. And if you've got state minimum coverage provides $50,000 worth of medical coverage for people in the other car. So if you've got people in the other car that have substantial injuries, $50,000 is going to run out in a week. So we want to make sure that our customers, even prospective customers we're talking to, understand what all those fancy numbers mean. It's kind of a
Yes.
different lingo that we speak in the insurance world. We want to make sure that it's not a foreign language to our customers. What do those numbers mean, and what do they mean to you if you are at fault in a wreck?
And sometimes people, when you get in that routine, I just want the least I can get, the least I can get. It's because you think going from the minimum to a good amount of coverage is so much more expensive, but many times it's not. It's not that much more.
It's a little bit more expensive in most cases. It's more expensive, but it would surprise you the small difference there is
Exactly.
between state minimum coverage and what we would think to be adequate or recommended coverage is we're talking
Exactly.
about 10 times the amount of coverage. It's not 10 times the cost. It might be 50% more in cost, but it's for most people, it's worth it. If we had a situation recently where we had a customer whose father-in-law was involved in an at-fault wreck, and the other people had serious injuries, and he ran out of coverage
Oh no.
on his policy, and they're putting a lien on his house. The
Wow.
judgment is a personal judgment, is what's called a summary judgment, if I've got the legal term right.
Yeah.
The at-fault party is responsible for paying for those damages, whether they've got insurance or not. We want to make sure they've got insurance and they don't have to worry about who's going to own their house.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That sounds crazy, but that happens.
It happens all the time.
It does.
All the time, because people don't realize that, like you said, yes, it is more. I wasn't trying to give the impression that it wasn't more, but for what you could get for that amount of money is so much more.
Absolutely.
I remember the first time I got a quote. Somebody really sat down and helped me understand what umbrella insurance was, and I got a quote. I'm like, "Are you kidding me? That's all it cost?
A couple $100 a year." Yeah, it sounds like a lot, but when you have a situation like I just described, that extra $1 million or $2 million worth of liability coverage for a couple $100 a year can make the difference between having a judgment versus having enough insurance to pay the claim. It's a big difference for a little bit of money, relatively speaking.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what I was going to ask you. I don't know the gentleman, and I really feel bad for him in this situation, but because I'd hate to be there myself. But if he would have had an umbrella policy, then he probably wouldn't have a lien on his house today.
That's absolutely correct. I think I can't remember the exact figure, $650,000 or $700,000 worth of medical.
Whoa! Oh my goodness!
In the other vehicle, and
wow.
with what we think of as adequate protection on the auto, that would have paid up to $500,000, and then that umbrella would have kicked in to pay for that extra expense, and that customer for just a few $100s a year in additional premium would have had insurance to cover that loss, as opposed to having a lien on their house.
Yeah. And sometimes people say, well, I can't afford that. But sometimes if we really think what we're spending our money on, and we could divert a few funds to something else. It's almost like nowadays we can't afford not to have it.
That's right.
Because there's so many high-end vehicles on the road now. I mean, so many. I've got kind of this dream pickup truck that I have in my mind I like to buy. And I saw a guy the other day had one. I pulled up the pump at the service station, and I was over there peeking around the pump looking at it, and he walked out, and I said, man, could you show me the truck? And he showed it to me, and I said, about 80,000. And he said, yeah, right at that.
Yeah, oh boy,
$80,000
I
for
never
a
thought a
pickup
pickup truck would be 80,000. That's crazy.
Yeah, so I mean, just thinking about that, that's just a pickup truck. This is not a sports car.
Right.
This is not a high-end sports car, you know. So and so I want you to talk to me. Let's switch the subject a little bit to homeowners insurance. What are some of the myths and misconceptions that people have regarding homeowners insurance when you try to talk to them about getting proper coverage?
Oh boy, we get lots of questions about dogs. We get lots of questions about pools and trampolines. We get lots of questions. You know, in days past, in days that I can remember, if you had a pit bull or a Rottweiler, you couldn't get homeowners insurance from a lot of insurance companies. That's just not true anymore. There's a term in the insurance business that's called attractive nuisance. Big fancy word for if you put a pool in your front yard and you don't have a fence around your yard or the pool, you're inviting the neighborhood to come swim in your pool, essentially. So
yeah, you just built a community pool, didn't you?
Yeah, right. I mean, not very much good can happen if you invite the neighborhood to swim in your yard, in your pool. So that term attractive nuisance is just that. You know, there's if we invite a lot of people that we don't know to come to our place whenever they want to, whether we're home or not, we're asking for something bad to happen. Same kind of thing with a pool as a trampoline. Used to have lots of questions about trampolines. If you've got it fenced or protected around the trampoline, there's pretty good chance nobody's going to be injured while jumping on it. But there's also a pretty good chance that nobody from the neighborhood's going to come climb into it if it's protected. So those are a couple of things.
Yeah.
What it costs to rebuild a house today. You know, you talked about the $80,000 pickup truck. You know, the $80,000 pickup truck used to be a $40,000 pickup truck.
Yeah.
A lot of those same sorts of scenarios have happened with building costs in the last several years. We blame a lot on COVID, and COVID has something to do with it. But a $300,000 house 5 years ago is $500,000 or $600,000 now to rebuild that thing. So we want to make sure, again, that goes back to having that conversation consistently with our customers is, do we need to recalculate how much it would cost to rebuild your house? Do we have enough coverage to rebuild your house if we had a total loss? Heaven forbid we have another tornado here ever, but do we have enough coverage to rebuild your house in the event of a fire or a tornado loss? We want to make sure we have those conversations.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I remember, and I've got enough gray hair in my head now that I can remember when you could build a pretty nice house for $80,000 to $100,000. You know, now that's so basic that people don't even want to look at.
Tiny house on wheels.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Tiny home. Yeah.
Tiny home on wheels.
Yeah. So it's times have changed, expenses have changed, and this is where we just need to make sure we've got the right coverage. I remember having some damage in my house. This is long ago, and it wasn't State Farm. I'm not going to mention the company. I don't think they've got local agents. It's one of those 1-800 number companies.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
But I had insurance with them, and I had a claim in my house, and I called, and they sent an adjuster out, and adjuster, first thing he says, "I'm sorry, they won't cover this." And I was sick. It was like it was going to cost about $5,000 to repair it. And it was just sick. I didn't know they didn't cover it. It was something that seemed like could happen to anybody, to me, but it was damage that was going on that I didn't know about. And by the time it got bad enough, I found out about it, and they said, "We don't cover damage like that." Well, that made me that left me in a bad place. So there's a lot of things today that it's the reason you need to sit down with an agent and talk about what you're doing, what you've got. Is it going to cover you? Is it going to take care of you when you need it? Because if there's one thing that I guess make people hate insurance is when they have those situations and it's not covered. But if they would have just sat down with an agent, been willing to sit down and listen and be taught, be educated, they could have avoided it altogether. That's where the stigma, we need to get rid of the stigma, but we don't want to talk to an agent. We just want to pick up the phone and call a number and get a quote and get coverage and move on.
Right.
We need to talk to somebody to make sure we've got the right thing.
I absolutely 100% agree with that. Philosophically, I 100% agree with that. You know, there are going to be some things that aren't covered. If like I said before, if insurance covered everything, we couldn't afford to pay for it. Typically, though, if we can determine the cause of the loss and the date that it occurred, we're going to find a way to find coverage if it's at all possible. Stuff that happens, inside walls or inside cabinets, or water leak over months. That's the kind of thing that any insurance company, no company is going to cover something that's been happening for months. As the homeowner, I don't want to be flippant and say, well, you ought to notice something like that, but plumbing issues like that, you also kind of have a duty as the homeowner to make sure that maintenance is kept up and that kind of thing. Again, having those conversations, and we make customers aware of what is and what isn't part of the policy. It
exactly
at least increases the understanding. Doesn't fill in all the gaps. It makes sure they understand.
If I could have one best friend in the world, Richard, it'd be understanding. Because when understanding comes, then you know what to do. It eliminates the back end. If someone had taught me, I was just very young then. If someone had taught me what I needed to do about maintenance, I needed to do about my house, then I could have avoided that. Just sitting down with someone that had some education, some understanding.
Sure.
And I think that's one of the things that this 1-800 age that we're living in, we're missing that. We're missing that, as you said, that customer service. And that's what you provide, and that's wonderful. If there was one thing, Richard, that you wish that people knew about the heart of Don Self State Farm, Richard and all the other crew there at Don Self State Farm, but they probably wouldn't know unless you shared it with them. And today you'd like to just state it loud and proud here on the Good Neighbor podcast to everybody so they'll know. What would that be?
Boy, it's kind of hard to narrow it down to just one thing, Scott. But I think if we would rather, I say this to customers a lot, I would rather tell you the truth and not win your business than to tell you a lie to win your business. There's you can't outlive a lie. And if you don't tell the truth, it's hard to remember what you told everybody. You have to tell another lie. We'd rather tell you exactly the way it is. Earn your business, earn it by having a relationship, having those conversations, as opposed to trying to trick you or lie to you or to hide something. So as I said earlier, we like to do business the old-fashioned way. We like to, when someone is considering changing their families or their businesses insurance that they've had for the last 15 years, if they're considering a change for whatever reason, we want to sit down and go over not only what we propose, but what they currently have. Look at them side by side. Make sure that they have that understanding. Let's make sure that we've covered all the bases. We don't want to leave any stone unturned. All those cliches. We want to make sure that there's no questions. Once we've had that conversation, we want to make sure that we answer questions. There's no misunderstandings. You said a mouthful when you said if you could just have one gift in life, it would be understanding. That's huge. Understanding, it's absolutely essential when you're talking about something as important as your family's insurance plan.
Yeah, if understanding came when I was told when I first got my car at 16, make sure you change that oil on a regular basis, because if you don't, it's the life of the engine. That was understanding. So I knew what to do. But if I'd never been told that, and the next thing I knew, my motor, had went down on me. We used to use the term blew up on me, and it was ruined. And then I found out I needed to change oil. That understanding didn't help me at that point.
That's right.
So if I'm willing to sit down and gain understanding now, it could alleviate me having a lot of problems later. And that's the kind of point I'm trying to get to, and I feel like, because you brought up the customer service aspect of it, that's important. That's important. And Richard, I appreciate you so much today. It's been wonderful talking to you.
It's been great, Scott.
And hearing the heart of your company and who you are and what you're. I know it's your dad's company, but your company too, because you're working there and helping there. And you tell Mr. Don that we're proud of him, and keep up the good work, and relax. Time to start relaxing a little bit.
That's not one of his great gifts. Relaxing.
Tell him to get him a fishing pole. Just go down and throw it in the water. And if it ain't got no worm on it, just throw it down in the water.
Probably not going to happen at this point, Scott. I'm sort of resigned to that.
Well, we appreciate you so much, Richard, for coming on the program today. And I want to give you a little space here, and I want you to tell us how to reach out to you, how to find you. If there's online, if there's more information that people can just tell us all the different ways that we can find out about you.
Do this in reverse. We do have an online presence. It's donself.net. donself.net. You can find out that's our online storefront. You can tell an awful lot about not just State Farm, but how we do business by looking at what our presence online. But the most valuable way that you can get in touch with us is probably just by picking up the phone, calling us. Let's have a conversation. We can schedule a time to get together face to face, or we can have a meaningful conversation like you and I are having today. We can have it via Zoom or Microsoft Teams or one of those interactive methods online. But if you just want to call our office, our number is 423-396-2126. You can call us any time of the day. We're here from 8 o'clock to 5, Monday through Friday. And any one of our team members would be absolutely delighted to have a conversation with you. That first conversation might be information gathering, might be having a talk about needs assessment and those kinds of things. And it might lead to a second phone conversation or an in-person meeting after we've had an opportunity to assess needs and prepare an answer to some of those needs. But phone call is a great start. Save 15%, 15 minutes or less can save you 15. We can't even get all the information we need to have a conversation in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Hey.
And we're not going to advertise that we can. We want to take that first few minutes to get to know you a little bit, get to know you, your family virtually or on phone, get to know what your needs are, understand that word again, understand a little bit about what your needs are so we can find out the best solution to fill those needs.
Yeah. Anybody that tells you they can do it in 15 minutes or less is more concerned about their bottom line than they are yours. I mean, that's just the way it is.
A mouthful right there. Yeah. I agree with that.
Well, Don, Richard, sorry, let's say Don. Richard, thank you again for being with us today, and we appreciate you so much, and have been a pleasure to have you on the Good Neighbor podcast.
Been a lot of fun, Scott. I really appreciate your invitation.
Absolutely. And, to all the good neighbors of the greater Chattanooga region, after meeting Richard and, learning a little bit more about Don Self, State Farm, and what they do, what they offer, how important customer service is to them. I know that he hopes that when you have this need that you'll keep them in mind and that you'll reach out to their website. He mentioned donself.net or to their phone number, either one, and to contact them, give them a chance. In this day microwave age, I call it, where we want everything at the touch of our fingers instantly. When it comes to ensuring our family's financial future, of our financial needs, slow down and take a few minutes longer and talk to someone Ask the questions you need to know. Let them talk to you about the different coverages to make sure that you don't find yourself in the position that Richard was talking about, this unfortunate situation that a family has found themselves in now, the lien on their house because they didn't have enough coverage. It's important. If you're a homeowner, realize that values have shot out the roof, and so have building costs, and you might need to take another look at what it would cost to rebuild your home if you have a total loss. These things are important to our financial future. It's not an age. A lot of times we look at, they're just trying to make more money off of us. It's not that. It's about making sure you're taken care of, because if you're not taken care of, then who's it matter who the insurance agent you've got? But if you want somebody that'll take care of you, you need to find that one you trust, and they'll provide you the education and understanding you need. And it sounds like Richard's a good one, so I know he hopes you'll keep him in mind. And before ending the episode, I would also like to say thank you for all the listeners out there who have taken time out of your day to listen to the Good Neighbor podcast. As always, please remember to support the locally owned and operated businesses in the greater Chattanooga region, from Cleveland to Dalton, Jasper to Benton, all the little communities in between. They're all important, and all of our businesses are important. So my name's Scott Howell again. I'm with the Friends and Neighbors Group. Been wonderful having you today. Everyone go out and make this a remarkable day.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpcleveland.com. That's gnpcleveland.com, or call 423-380-1984.